Rugby, the Olympic sport America won, then abandoned for football. There is a town in England called Rugby. Population 70,000. Warwickshire. Unremarkable in almost every way, except for one thing. In 1823, at Rugby School, a student picked up a football during a match and ran with it, which was completely against the rules. And yet, nowadays, the plaque on the school wall still reads, "Who with a fine disregard for the rules of football has played in his time, first took the ball in his arms and ran with it," thus originating the distinctive feature of the rugby game AD 1823, a sport born from breaking the rules that would spend the next 2 centuries becoming the most codified game on earth. And the country that came closest to adopting it then deliberately walked away, the United States. Let's go off script. Rugby, Warwickshire, that's where it starts. Not on a professional pitch. Not on a stadium. In a schoolyard. In the mud. Among boys who were supposed to be playing football. Nobody planned a new sport that day. Nobody has written a line about that. The account of Ellis's invention was written 50 years after the event. So it may be a legend, it may be a myth. But here's what's real. In 1845, Rugby School issued players with the first written rule book. The rules spread to other schools. Other schools spread them to universities. And then universities spread them to clubs. And clubs spread them to the entire world. Elite and then not only. Fast forward 80 years. October 9th, 1905. The President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt, summons the coaches of Harvard, Yale, and Princeton to the White House. Not about war, not about the economy, about football. Because American football is killing people, and not a few. In the 1905 season alone, 18 deaths, 150 serious injuries on college football fields. Theodore Roosevelt, war hero, big game hunter, the most aggressively masculine president in American history, blinks. His own son is playing for the Harvard freshman team, so he gives the college power an ultimatum: fix it or lose it. And here's what happens next, and nobody tells you. Stanford and California switched to rugby. Columbia, Northwestern, and Duke dropped football entirely. Rugby, not really a new sport, the one American football had been derived from in the first place. And so at that time there is news. Stanford and the University of California's annual big game, one of the great American sporting rivalries, is suddenly contested under rugby rules. For 1 decade, in one crucial window of history, rugby has a real chance in America. 1920, Antwerp, Belgium, the Olympic Games. A United States rugby team, composed largely of players from Stanford University, defeats France to win the gold medal. America, Olympic rugby champions. Who knew that? Worse, 4 years later, Paris, 1924. France had won gold that seemed certain. So certain that Olympic organizers scheduled the rugby competition 2 months before the rest of the games, when French players would be in peak form. The American team? It was difficult to find enough good American rugby players to field a competitive team. One player from this squad later recalled, "We were told to go to Paris and take our beatings like gentlemen. Instead, the Americans tackling knocked the star French out of the game." So United States, Olympic rugby champions for the second time. But then rugby was removed from the Olympics. And so America quietly, completely walked away from this sport. So nowadays, the United States still holds those gold medals. They are still the reigning Olympics champion in a sport that is barely played in their country for over a century. So what happened? Why did America choose football over rugby? The answer is not what you think. No, it was not because football was more exciting, or safer, or better. No, it was just because football was more controllable. Rugby comes with a code that cannot be negotiated. For example, the referee is called Sir. His decision is final. You cannot surround him. You accept the call even when it's wrong, because without that acceptance, the game collapses entirely. In the NFL, a player can spend 3 minutes debating a penalty. Coaches throw flags. Owners call lawyers. In rugby, if you argue with the referee, your team moves back 10 meters. No discussion, no appeal. Try selling that to a television executive. Because that's exactly what the rugby refuses to do. The sport has 5 values, written down, official, binding. Integrity, you play fair, even when nobody's watching. Passion, you care about the game and the people in it. Solidarity, unifying spirit that transcends cultural, geographic, political and religious differences. But also discipline, you follow the laws on and off the field. Respect for teammates, for opponents, for match officials. And you can't put solidarity on a commercial break. You can't sell integrity to a sponsor. American football took a different path. It invented the forward pass. It added helmets. It fragmented the game into plays, timeouts, commercial breaks. It became a product. Something that you could sold and owned by a league. Rugby refused that. That stubborn insistence that the game's values were non-negotiable is exactly what made it impossible to commercialize the American way. America chose football, the star, the product, the forward pass. Rugby kept something else, something harder to explain and harder to sell. Rugby went where the British went, but not always where the empire went. In France, for example, it arrived in the ports. English merchants, students, traders, no conquest, no colonization, just men who played on a Sunday afternoon and invited the locals to watch. In the villages of the French southwest, it became the Sunday, the field, the families, fathers and sons, and then daughters. The whole town watching, a sport imported by the English, but completely absorbed by people who made it entirely their own. Other example, in New Zealand, the empire did arrive, and rugby arrived with it. But the Maori people took it too, and added something the British had never ever imagined, the haka. The very first New Zealand representative rugby team performed a haka during a tour of Britain in 1888, a ceremonial Maori war challenge, a rallying cry before heading into battle, a colonial sport that made space for the ritual of the colonized people, that incorporated it, that made it central, and people go completely silent because the code demands it. You face the haka. You don't run away. June 24th, 1995, Johannesburg, Ellis Park Stadium, the Rugby World Cup final, South Africa versus New Zealand. 1 year after the end of apartheid, the Springboks jersey had long been associated with segregation, with white-only selection, with racial superiority. Before the match, the door to the South African changing room opens. In walks Nelson Mandela, wearing the Springbok jersey, number 6, the captain number. Peña would later say, "I had to go and collect myself. The guys were prepared to run through walls." South Africa wins, 15-12. Nelson Mandela walks onto the pitch and hands the William Webb Ellis Cup to Peña. "Francois, thank you for what you've done for our country." Peña replies, "No, Mr. President, thank you for what you've done." The journalists ask Pina what it felt like having 60,000 fans in the stadium. We didn't have 60,000 South Africans. We had 43 million. Nobody planned that moment. No league, no commissioner, no television deal. Just a sport with 5 values written on a wall of a town of 70,000 people. Today, rugby is the fastest growing team sport in the United States. Girls and boys, same clubs, same rules, same handshake at the end, even after someone breaks your nose. A century after American walked away, the sport it rejected is filling stadiums on every continent. The World Cup is a global event. While American football, the product, the stars, it is still only in the US. Rugby refused to be a product. And somehow, maybe that's exactly why the world can't stop watching it. This was History of Script. See you soon.